Hey folks, Quiet Emerald here. After much thought and procrastination, I've decided to continue this template style of video creation. I will continue to take clips from my VODs, so depending on the time the game is streamed, you may notice my avatar has some inconsistencies. That is because my VTuber avatar has come a long way. The current version is a pastel flowery cutie, but without further ado, onwards to the video. For this video, I will be looking at the lovely game Resident Evil, the original Resident Evil, with a few tweaks and stuff of course. For this playthrough, I played the PC version with the Source Next port and the Rebirth Classic mod in the HD pack to make it look nice and spiffy. The game was developed and published by Capcom, you know, the devs responsible for some notable classics like Street Fighter, Monster Hunter, Devil May Cry, and Dead Rising. I never got to play the original Resident Evil. Given the time that it came out, I was essentially a potato, so my experience and introduction to the series of Resident Evil was with Resident Evil 2 for the good old Nintendo 64. I did eventually play Resident Evil, but it would be through the GameCube release, Resident Evil Remake, which was just chef's kiss, mamma mia, holy heck, that was a spicy meatball. I can say that, I'm half Italian. In Resident Evil, you play as a member of STARS, aka Special Tactics and Rescue Service, aka the Rescue Heroes, but with guns and cool hair. You are tasked with going into the nearby forest of Raccoon City to investigate some grisly and spoopy murders that have been happening. These murders ain't like ordinary murders, because the victims were eaten, alive, by monsters. Unfortunately, while you are investigating, some of those monsters rear their ugly, spoopy heads and scare the STARS team into a nearby mansion. But things aren't as they seem in this strange residence. The game takes place entirely in a mansion. There are many rooms, each with different styles and puzzles. Each room is connected through various hallways, and multiple paths can be utilized to get to these places. You can also go outside somewhat, along the balcony areas or the courtyards. This helps open the game a bit rather than feeling like you're entirely trapped inside a mansion the whole time. There's also a basement level which contains many interesting secrets that I won't spoil. The game is quite vast in what it has to offer in terms of setting. Before starting a game, you can choose between two characters, Jill Valentine, the Master of Unlocking, and Chris Redfield, the Boulder Puncher himself. The gameplay is very old school. I feel weird using that word, mainly because this wasn't old when I was gaming, but it is technically old now. Each character has a different style in how they play. Jill has better weapon variety and more inventory space, while Chris has more health and is faster. Jill can also unlock the locked cabinets found throughout the game, while Chris must find keys for them. Jill is the ideal playthrough for the first time player, and Chris is best for the second time playthrough. Given that the game started the overall momentum with survival horror games, it can be expected that item management and resource management are important. There are only so many items around the mansion that if you blow through all your ammo like Rambo, or like a Call of Duty player discovering the left click button on the mouse for the first time, you're going to find yourself with nothing but plants and a knife to fight the undead, which then just becomes the Les Stroud experience at that point. The game is set with fixed camera angles, and the characters are moved with tank controls. It may take a bit to get used to if you're unfamiliar with these controls, but once you learn how they work, it really isn't that difficult to navigate the environments. There's a simple crafting system in the game where you can combine different herbs to create different healing items. There are safe areas in the game where you can take a breather, sort your inventory, and save your game. The save system requires ink ribbons, which are an item, and they are used at typewriters so that you can save. I would recommend not saving in just one slot, but multiple in case you screw yourself over with poor item management. Speaking of items, don't worry, you're not gonna just juggle everything like some clown. Instead, you get access to item chests, which are all interlinked between each safe room. This makes it so that you can drop items off at one place and still retrieve them when you reach another. The game also has various puzzles throughout the story, each one requiring knowledge and patience when it comes to solving them. My advice would be to read everything you come across and take your time with things. At the end of the day though, it is just a video game, and don't feel bad about asking a friend for help or from searching for hints on the internet. I personally never found myself entirely stumped by the puzzles, and given enough time, I was able to overcome them. The environments are well done, and shine when the game is used with the HD textures. Everything feels creepy and off-putting, and this feeling can leave you on edge as you explore each room, not knowing what monsters could be lurking behind each door. At first, everything is quite linear. You'll find yourself going through areas multiple times, and as the game progresses, you'll have access to the whole mansion, and you'll be able to navigate it like a pro. This makes it so you can choose your battles if you're low on ammo or just want to save on some supplies. You can choose specific routes that you know are safe, whilst leaving other routes out of the picture. Don't think this will remain so throughout the entirety of the game. As the game progresses, there are specific events that can render once peaceful hallways into dangerous lizard dens. Without spoiling the game, the story is very generic, but it is done in a way that gives it its charm, if that makes sense. It is cheesy, and you can't help but smile at its cheesiness. Few of the cinematics in the game are done through live-action cinematics with real actors, which is something I miss from back then. Most of the cinematics are done with the in-game engine itself. The story, though, is quite straightforward, and is easy to follow if you're reading everything, following along with the dialogue, which isn't that complex. The characters are very generic as well. There isn't a lot of depth here, and I don't think that was really the intention the developers were going for. It feels very B-movie, if that makes sense. It's so bad that it's good, and that can be said about the entirety of the story and the characters' interactions. Think of the Room style kind of bad. Kinda like that, so bad that it's good. I would say the voice acting for the characters is god-awful. It feels like an alien was trying to pretend to be a human and wrote these lines. The number of memes, though, these lines have given the Resident Evil community make up for its awful dialogue and voice acting. The tone of the characters just feel off, and the interactions between characters feel even more awkward than a grade 9 talent show. It almost feels like something out of Twin Peaks, not in a bad way though. The graphics aren't anything to write home about, but the style they went with was very realistic looking, and it just fits the whole genre. I personally like the aesthetic of the older Resident Evil games, and I wish they'd go back to using backgrounds like this. The sounds used in the game are nice, everything feels appropriate. The guns sound good, the doors and the footsteps sound great. I think where the sound shines the most though is the monsters. Each monster, whether it be a zombie or a zombie dog, all sounds terrifying, and it matches the overall feel of the game. What I like about the monsters making their own specific sounds is that it helps with figuring out what dangers may be lurking in each room. Because the cameras are fixed, you can't orient the camera the way you want to. So you must pretend to be Daredevil for a bit, and rely on the sounds around you to determine what you're up against. I really love the soundtrack to this game. It is very simple, but it achieves what it sets out to do. It sets the mood for the environments you're exploring. You have tunes that make you feel on the edge of your seat, and then you have soundtracks that bring you back down and help you relax. Specifically, the save room theme, which has become iconic in every Resident Evil game. I also really love the ambient soundtracks, the sort of soundscapes that are found throughout the game, areas where there's no music playing, and rather it's just sounds of the environment surrounding you. It makes you feel isolated and alone in this nightmarish mansion. As far as bugs and glitches, I would say I didn't come across any that I can remember, or that really stood out to me. I think if you're a big fan of survival horror games, and haven't had the chance to play one of the most important survival horror games that started it all, I would suggest playing this game. So, before wrapping up, let's mention the good. It has an original premise and setting, intricate level design, rewarding challenges, solid mechanics, memorable soundtrack, immersive gameplay, fantastic static environments, appropriate sound effects, and can be played still despite its age. Now let's talk about the wonk. It has a goofy story, terrible dialogue, terrible voice acting, isn't available to purchase on Steam, GOG, etc., and can be a bit intimidating if you want to play the PC version. Thanks for watching, folks. I had a lot of fun making this video, and I hope you enjoyed it too. You can find me on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and possibly in the pajama drawer because it's comfy in there. Until next time, I'm Quiet Emerald. Be safe and play some games, folks.